Thanks. Yes. Well, hello to all. So I'm Anu, and yeah, I'm here about. Because I want to share my horrible traumatic experience with you in this kind of a project we did a few years back. And I'm really happy to be here, finally. I applied as a speaker already a couple of years ago, and I've been growing old while waiting to get on this stage. So there are other old people than Ray present. Well, few words about me. So I nowadays work at a company called Etteplan, but I used to work up until last August as a CEO and a co-founder at our Adina Solutions, which was a company concentrating on all stuff related to technical communications. And then we sold our company to Etteplan, and now I'm there. And I was very happy to meet my colleagues from Poland here. I've been in tech comms about 20 years, so quite a long time, and I've been working in many different roles. I started as a technical writer. I've been doing information design, project management, team leader, terminology, localization stuff, all kinds of stuff. And recently, for example, I've been developing content creation processes and supporting customers modularizing their content. And with modularizing, we of course mean going from unstructured to structured documentation. And then I've been training technical writers as well. And why this topic? Why do I want to share my experience on going into modular documentation or online documentation in a very, very fast schedule? Like we have heard in several presentations, there is very much this pressure to going into digital content, and it's been like growing during the COVID epidemic, of course. So more and more companies, even those conservative ones who are still doing their documentation with MS Word, FrameMaker, or something like that, they start feeling the pressure. And ever so more, especially, for example, with heavy machinery, because the EU Machinery Directive is going to be renewed. And at the moment, the directive requires to deliver documentation in printed format. So that's why there are those truckloads of paper going on still. And the renewal will allow documentation to be delivered in digital format. So even those heavy machinery, maybe a bit conservative companies need to prepare themselves to deliver content in digital format. And then the other thing is that usually it takes quite a lot of time to start planning how are we going to go into structured documentation and what kind of tools we are going to select. But what if there's no time? What if there is urgency to get your content into digital format, to get it out in HTML format? If you don't have time, what do you do? And the other case might be that you are already doing structured documentation, but you realize that your current system has become a monster. You have bought it 15 years ago, 10 years ago from a company who doesn't develop anymore their tools, for example, or their tool has just downright become outdated. And you spend more time managing your content than actually creating anything new. And here's a typical to-do list if you are switching into structured documentation. We don't have to go it through now, but I presented this list a few years back in Nordic TechCom conference, where I pointed out about being careful when planning to going into structured documentation. It takes time. You need to decide, for example, is it going to be DITA, some other standard, XML? How are we going to do it? You need to do different kinds of analysis to your current content. You need to do different kinds of plans, define your metadata. And maybe the most difficult part, you have to decide what kind of a content management system we are going to get. What's the best tool on the market? And you know that there are plenty of those tools on the market. We have here a couple of vendors presenting their tools. How do you know what's the best for you? So there are a lot of decisions to make. I'm going to present you this case study. So what we had to do 5 years ago, we had just founded our own company, and then we got contacted by our fellow ex-colleagues from Nokia. So I have a Nokia Microsoft background, and they founded their own startup. It's called HMD Global, and I have a permission from them to use their name and show pictures from their website, because they're still there. And HMD Global bought feature phone manufacturing from Microsoft. If you remember, we sold Nokia mobile phones to Microsoft, blah, blah, blah. There's probably some of you have worked for Nokia as well. And they also licensed Nokia brand name so that they can start manufacturing new Nokia phones. And because they were a startup, they needed to get the phones on the market very quickly, because of course they had financing just for a particular time. And because they found it themselves very quickly, they didn't have time to recruit experts and people who know all about, putting mobile phones and smartphones on the market. So they bought a lot of this expertise outside. And we were one of them. They wanted to buy the user guides from us, both online and printed ones. I'm not going to go into the printed ones because that would be another case story. It was also a traumatic project, but maybe I'll present it next year in SOAP. Their requirements was that they need proper user support and quickly. It was okay to start with PDFs because when they contacted us, they were already publishing their first smartphones. And for them, they produced just PDFs based on MS Word documentation done by somebody else. And the other thing was that they wanted to, of course, keep the tool architecture as simple as possible because it was of money. Startups don't have much money. So they wanted to start simple. Knowing all this, and if you have a similar case, there's not a lot of budget, you're in a hurry. You already know that you will have to cut some corners. So these were the questions we started asking when they asked us into the project, and we had already said yes, even though we didn't even know the schedules, we didn't know the tools. We just knew that we have to produce online user guides and PDFs. So we needed to think that can we live without DITA? We used to have a fancy system, content management system based on DITA at Nokia, where we produced the user guides. So now we had to ask, can we live without DITA? And if you already are having a lot of content and you're moving to structured, so how much do you want to take with you to the new system? Can you leave legacy content in the old system? How much content do you need to maintain or update? Can you live without all of the legacy content? And maybe the most painful question is that can you live without some of your current features that you have in your current content management system? And can you drop some of your requirements? We have done a few projects with customers that we've supported them in selecting a new content management system. And when you start doing that kind of projects, the first thing is that you start listing customer requirements. What do they want? What do the authors want from the content management system? What is needed by IT? What do you need to do to be able to publish content? And sometimes the lists are very long. There might be even like 300, 400 requirements. And then you have to classify them. What are the must-haves? What are the nice-to-haves? So can you live without some of those even must-have requirements? And then one also very painful question is that can you cooperate with the marketing teams, sharing maybe the same tool? So I know this is painful for us technical communicators if we have to cooperate with marketing people. But yes, this was something we had to consider as well. And can you drop any content? Well, in our case, the way of working added some complexity to this project that when we started working on it and we started realizing that what had we promised to do and started feeling that this is really a project doomed to fail. The way of working, like I said, it was a startup and they bought a lot of expertise outside. So we were basically different vendors working together for one customer. So the customer, HMD, gave us the requirements, schedules. They would be reviewing the content, of course, and give the final approvals. But other than that, they gave us quite free hands to create the content and create the process and things because they just didn't have time to support us. So they said that do it. These are the other vendors you have to work. This is when we want something published. These vendors were the closest vendors we worked with. So there's the tool. I'll say a few words about the tool a bit later. And then there was a company A who actually managed the platform, the web publishing, so the Nokia.com where stuff would be published. Content model for us was done by yet another vendor. So we couldn't even do the content model ourselves. It was given to us as such. And then one of the most important partners in this horrible project was a localization vendor. Because, you know, we were going to have up to 50 languages that we needed to localize the content. And we didn't even, at that point, we didn't even know what the tool is going to be. What's the process? It was horrible. And this was before Corona, and we worked remotely. I never met these people when we started working. I only met them, a few of them, like a year after we started. Lionbridge was the vendor. They were in Poland and in Ireland. The couple of those companies, they were in Finland, but they were in a different city than where I was. Contentful, I think the tool is based in Netherlands. At least the people I interacted with were in Netherlands. And then there was us, content creation team. I was in Finland, Tampere, and then I had 2 other people, and then 1 person in UK. So we were 4 people. None of us worked this in full time. I was probably the one working like 90%, the others doing, you know, like helping. So basically I was alone in this project. So, not a very good start, and it was doomed to fail. And like in one of the presentations, that what will go wrong will go wrong. So everything, it was horrible, and I'll give you the challenges as well. This was the timeline, basically. So we got on board in January, and in June, we were supposed to publish 4 user guides, localized user guides. I had to get back to, when I started doing this presentation, I had to start looking at my old emails from that time. And it was really painful because I started realizing that this really was a very traumatic project, and I don't understand how we managed it now when I look back at it. And I can't even remember most of the things we did. I read the emails and, oh my God, was I so smart? How did we mitigate this risk? That was really clever. It was really amazing that we actually survived this. So in February, the customer decided the tool. We had some say, we were giving like comments. They had some few tools that they had looked into with their marketing people, and we were giving like some of the requirements, and they listened to some of the requirements, and I'll tell you in a minute which were the ones, the minimum requirements. The tool was decided, it's contentful, we got to know it in February. And then the content model was done also during that time. In March, the content model was finished, and we got the access to the tool, which meant that we got the login credentials and 1 hour training. 1 hour training. None of us knew the tool beforehand. It's a headless content management system. Someone here could probably explain what is a headless content management system, but it's not a full content management system, so it doesn't have all the features that proper content management system has. I'm not a technical person, even though I'm a technical writer, but I don't care how the tool works, I use it. So anyway, then in April, we started actually migrating the content that was in the Word, in MS Word, to the tool. And it was linear. It was a user guide for a smartphone, for an Android phone. But it was like we didn't know that how much of the content will be reusable in the upcoming models that we got, I suppose, the prototypes around April as well. So the way we work is that we get the phone, the phone model, a proto, and then we just start, investigating how does it work, and then we write the instructions, how does it work. And for that, I have to tell that one of the models, when the Google Assistant, the voice assistant, came to the Android phones, and I thought that I hate this feature so much that I want to write instructions for the users how they can power it off, because it's so annoying. And I started Googling those instructions, but I didn't find them. So I turned on the voice assistant and I asked him, her, that how do I turn you off? And then it gave me the instructions and I wrote them in the user guide. So that was just something I just realized that, yeah, that's how we did the user guide. And then, at the same time, when we started writing the content, I will tell you about some details about that, we started planning and testing the localization process. JSON files, importing and exporting. Yeah, it's not easy. 50 languages, RTL languages, Sinhala, Thai, Chinese, and so on. And then we actually had to go production on May, because in June, it was in beginning of June, we had to have 4 user guides ready to be published and localized. And it was horrible. And then after we managed that, yes, but after that we immediately had to start writing new user guides for new product models. And around August, so about, well, in July we were on holiday, like we are always in Finland in holiday in July, so we did nothing, basically. So in August we were in a factory mode. We had a process, we knew the tool, we had the localization process, and all settled. Yeah, right. Yeah, it took a couple of years to get everything, and we're still working for them. We're still doing these user guides, and we're still refining the process. But anyway, so the tool decision, the minimum requirements we had, and which they took into account, was that, of course, we try to reuse as much as possible, because with 50 languages localization, that is a must, because of the localization costs. And also, what was actually talked yesterday in one of the presentations, that customers, when you go global, if you do a global consumer product, they will need regionalized content in the user guides for various reasons, for regional requirements that come from national legislation, from, for example, in China, where we do these phones, you're not supposed to have any content about any Google apps, nothing whatsoever. Google, the word Google shouldn't appear in the content at all. And then, for example, for Brazil, which has the world's strictest consumer laws, we have to add this and that and all kinds of different instructions on top of the global content. So we had to have some kind of support that we can create regional, different kind of content for different languages. And of course, the support for localization. Output requirements, HTML and PDF. HTML, because of, online documentation, of course, and in addition, they wanted to create a mobile app. So we had to support the mobile app as well. PDF, well, first customers said, we don't need PDFs, but I said, yes, we do. Why? Why do we need PDFs? Well, exactly, legal requirements, and also because the tool, the authoring tool, didn't support any kind of review capabilities, and these user guides have to be reviewed because of legal wants to see them, the software people wants to see them, the hardware people wants to see them. So we have to deliver somehow the content for them to review it, and the legal requirements. When I was at Nokia, I was a so-called portfolio manager, so I was responsible on what kind of user guidance we give to or provide to the customers. And the time when things started to go badly for Nokia, when the iPhone came, so we had to start saving money, a lot of money. And I became very good at saving money, by the way. So if somebody was to save money in documentation, I'm there. So somebody suggested that could we get rid of PDF because it's an extra cost because you have to publish it. You need things to do. And I was like, no. But then they said yes. And I was like, well, let's see. And we published a new product, and there wasn't a PDF. And it took about 2 days after I got the first hate mail, internal hate mail from customer care. And I still remember the title of the mail was, "Dude, where is my PDF?" And then I started getting it all over the world, like, where the hell is the PDF? Where is it? When are you going to publish it? And then I sent all the mail to my manager, and I told you so, I told you so. So, PDF, I said, we need it. And we need it, yeah, that's true. What we missed, you can see we missed quite a lot. Quite important features. No content-related metadata. That's a horror. No conditioning, that means variables. We can't use variables, so you know what it means for reuse. Yeah, not a good thing. And not a module, I mean like a piece of content. So we don't have any kind of capabilities to reuse smaller pieces of content because the reuse happens at a topic level. This is hard to explain, but what you need to know is that if I need to change from product model to product model, even a one word, I can't reuse it. I have to create a new module. So the reuse capabilities, even though there were those, they were kind of crappy. And I told to the customer that with this tool, the more products, the more content we're going to have, the less reuse we're going to have. And that happened. And the tool, like I said, it's a headless CMS. Google it. You'll find what it means. The good and the bad. With the headless CMS, you can go digital very fast. It's an easy tool. You don't have to, as an author, I don't have to know only a couple of tags. It's not XML. There are a couple of tags to be used, but you learn them by heart really quickly. There's a content model, so it says to me that in this part you put steps, in this part you put description, in this part you put disclaimers. And our content model was very simple. I'll show you it also in a minute. As soon as the source content is ready, I can publish it immediately. That's a good thing, but it causes some problems because, for example, it's very error-prone, so if the I'm not supposed to publish anything immediately, but I accidentally publish something immediately, so it's a horror. But you can unpublish it also very quickly. So if I accidentally do something stupid, I can very quickly cover my traces. So quick publishing, very quick source updates. If there's a mistake in the source, I can correct it in English source very quickly. It's alive immediately, or when they clear their caches. But you can understand that the localized versions will lag behind. So of course, none of the localized versions are updated quickly unless you go and tweak the localizations manually, which you're not supposed to do, ever, never. I've never done that, I swear. And of course, very little content-related metadata. But I will tell you in a minute how did we manage, nevertheless. This is our content model. It looks complicated, but it isn't. I won't go into it, but I will go into the challenge we had when we started copy-pasting content into that tool and into that content model. You've probably done that if you've moved from unstructured to structured. So you have copy-pasted content into structured content model, into data or something else. What we quickly noticed is that the content doesn't fit into the content model. Because in the content model, for example, we had so-called search snippets, which is basically micro content, which we have been heard talking about today as well. And it's like in data short descriptions. So it's for Google that if somebody searches in Google, you get this short description under your search result. So of course there weren't search snippets in the MS Word document we got. Of course not. So we had to invent all those search snippets. We had to invent more headings. We had to write more content, so it wasn't just copy-pasting, and we were really in a hurry. What we did was we just divided the content into 3 parts. You take that part, you take that part, and start copy-pasting. And then we started copy-pasting, and then we started like chatting to each other that, what did you do with this? How do you do that? And then we just did it, and it was horrible. It wasn't nice, it was violent, horrible thingy. And but we were able to fit it into the content model. But a lot of rewriting, reorganizing the content. And at the same time, we had 4 products. 4 smartphones, very similar to each other, but certain differences in the feature set. So you can think that if you buy a smartphone that costs 500 euros and 100 euros, there are certain differences in the feature set. And we didn't really, well, we had a hunch that what parts could be reusable, and then we did those reusable topics, and then we started like reusing them we created the 4 user guides, and then we soon realized that, oh gosh, this isn't really reusable. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? So we had those sort of quick decisions to make. And then, how to add content-related metadata without having metadata. So we needed somehow to indicate, because there weren't any fields for metadata. The metadata really in the tool was version history, author name, things like that. Not very useful from the content point of view. The only place where we could add any content-related metadata in the tool was the internal name of the topic or module or whatever you were writing. So everything had an internal name that won't be visible to the end user. So it will never be published, but we can give whatever internal name we want to give. And of course, we first had to set rules that what kind of internal names we are going to give. So, because we were creating content for 2 different types of phones, so smartphones and feature phones, so they have different kind of operating system. So that was the first thing that, the differentiator. We have to indicate whether this content is for Android or whether this is for the other software. What we did was that, okay, we have the internal name, we add at the end of the name of the operating system. So we have like topics that could be called send text messages Android, or send text messages S30 plus, and so on. And then when we started noticing that, okay, we have a topic called, for example, the send text messages, but in this other phone, the menu path in the instruction has an extra, like a UI string that you have to tap. Advanced, it usually was, but this other one doesn't. Okay, we have to create two different topics, but how are we ever going to find the correct topic for the next product? And we were like, what the hell? How are we going to organize and manage this mess? We just had to add in the internal name, send text messages, advanced Android. And we were like, okay, very good. And you can imagine what kind of mess that creates now that we have like about, 60 products there, 60 user guides. So at some point, we just got fed up and we started just creating new topics like, or whatever. But the way we actually managed was that quite early we realized that we really need to have good content plans. So we created on Excel content plan where we described all the stuff we had ever created and we linked directly into the tool. We first had all the products in the same Excel sheet, but then it became longer and longer and more confusing, and then we decided that we just create a content plan per each product, and we just sort of give up of the hope that we could do a full kind of reuse that, because we're not going to find those old topics, that this could be reusable in a product that I'm creating in a year's time, but how the hell am I going to find it ever in the tool? Because there is no content-related metadata. And the search capabilities in the tool were really crappy in first. Now they have developed it. So other challenges, other than this content, was learning the tool by trial and error. First, we didn't have the PDF. All the schedules were changing, and we didn't do any pilots. So we went to production immediately. And I always say to all my customers that always do a pilot. Do a pilot always. And then I was in a project that we didn't do any pilots. Localization was a pain as well. I'm not going to tell all the horrors that there were, but of course with the JSON files, I can just give you an example where everything went wrong. When we delivered the localized JSON files back to the web publishing team, they couldn't get them open and they were full of errors. And then we started investigating that what's happening. And luckily in this project, I had my colleague from UK, Indy Liepa, which some of you already know. She's like a rock star. She's the best information architect and data expert in the whole world. And she soon realized that what's wrong, it was the tool architecture. We had PCs, they had Macs. And something went wrong when we sent JSON files from PCs to Macs. Something had to do in between. And what we needed to do was that every time I opened the JSON file on my PC, it got corrupted immediately. So if I wanted to check something, I had to send the web publishing company the uncorrupted versions. So that's what we learned by trial and error. And that's what we do still nowadays. So we continue doing that same thing. But yeah, lots of problems in localization. But how did we then survive? Well, we had a very small core team, like I said, just only 4 people. So we were really quick in problem solving. So we didn't have to keep, many people informed, but we could work in this very small team. So the communication was very quick. And because we had kind of free hands, we didn't actually consult the customer, but we had to solve the problems on our own and with the other vendors. the realistic risk reporting, we were really realistic with the customer. We told them honestly, but now we have these problems and we don't know whether we are able to deliver in schedule, but we are trying our best. And of course they were yapping to me because I was the project manager, and then I yapped to the other people and the localization vendor, but yeah, that's what you do when you're a project manager. But with the vendors, we had an excellent cooperation because we all had the same target. We wanted to deliver in time. We wanted our mutual customer to succeed with their phones. So that's why we worked together in a very good way. And I have to give credit to Lionbridge, and especially my counterpart there, project manager, was from Poland, Anna Makarowicz. And I was in SOAP here with her 2018, and she was an excellent localization project manager, and many of the things that we succeeded to do was because of her problem-solving skills. And then we started creating quickly those internal guidelines. Even though we were a small team, we knew that we probably have to onboard new technical writers into this project, and we need to document this process and the guidance. Lessons. What we learned, it is doable. You can go digital very quickly, but you have to do compromises, you have to cut corners, and don't expect to be perfect. You have to forgive things. You're going to do something wrong, you're going to do something really bad, but think what is the minimum, establish the absolute minimum quality criteria. And then the rest, you can update stuff, you can mend stuff. Do it iteratively, don't expect too much, and be sort of merciful to yourself. I know technical writers can sometimes try to be perfectionists, but you can do this forever, and you will never reach perfection. We're still not there. And of course, be ready to work hard for a while. We did long hours, I have to admit. I worked weekends, I worked nights, but I knew that it's only for a little while, and after that I can, have the holiday in July that I didn't have. And then flag issues immediately and be honest about the issues, and be honest if you don't know something, ask. Rather ask before you make a mistake, and because you're ashamed that I don't know. We didn't know the tool. We did horrible mistakes with the tool, but we learned and we documented everything. So now we have good guidelines. And clear communication and dedicated project manager. One person who's the spokesperson towards all the other vendors, to the customer, to your internal team. So one person who knows everything, so that the others don't have to. So those were the lessons. Where we are today, well, we keep writing those user guides still. Every now and again, I'm also involved. I'm the backup for our writers, so sometimes in holidays I have to go back to Contentful, and I'm also like the master of Contentful because I know everything about it. So if they have a problem, they usually, our writer comes to me that can I help, and then I start digging into it. And of course, the tool has been improved. And in this case, actually, the tool vendor listened to us because we gave them quite a lot of feedback that we would like to have this, we would like to have that, could you improve this? So they have improved the tool. And even though we have less and less reuse, and it's a mess, there are a huge amount of topics that we probably could reuse, but we can't find them anymore. But the content has stayed pretty much kind of stable, so we still get the benefit in the localization costs, of course, because of the translation memories. And if you want to go and see the output, go to nokia.com support. I think this is one of the latest user guides, so it's very simple, really, because nowadays people know how to use smartphones. So, but yeah, we survived, we're still here. It was a traumatic experience, thanks that I could share it with you. Maybe next year I'll share the story with the printed user guides with you. It's done with FrameMaker. Oh, thanks. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Anu. Okay, I already see the first question in the middle of the room.
Hi there. Name's Jacek. Thanks for this presentation. I wanted to ask you one question, especially about the parts that you mentioned when you talked about the cooperation between HMD Global and their choices that they've made, that apparently not all of them were very lucky ones. But what was their reasoning to choose Contentful as the primary tool for managing the content, even though they might have had some kind of an inkling that it might have been a bit ill-equipped for the job, especially with publishing PDFs? I want to know why they chose it.
Yeah, I know why. And the answer was actually somewhere at the beginning. So the marketing, you can imagine, the decision was led by the marketing department. So the tool fitted also for marketing. So they produce all their marketing content also through Contentful, and the rest of the customer care content. So that was the main reason. Yeah, it was marketing-led decision, obviously. Yeah. Yeah, but we just had to live with it. We didn't, in the end, have much influence, and that's how it goes if you work as a vendor for a customer. So very typically, it is the customer who has chosen the tool. Unfortunately, those decisions might not always have been very good ones, but then again, you just have to live with it and try to do your best.
So hi, Tomek here. Thanks for the presentation. A follow-up question, does Contentful do the variables and metadata now, or no?
No.
Not really?
No, unfortunately not. They have added some metadata there, metadata fields, but still they are not content related. So rather like managing the content, but not going deep into the content.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any more questions? No, I don't. Oh, there is one at the very top, or the very back of the room, and one in the very front.
Hi, Anu. Yes, now it works. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question related to this very short deadline. It was a big amount of work, as you just shown us. So why this deadline was that short and why you couldn't negotiate it?
Yeah, the schedule was short because the company had urgency to get the products out into the market. Of course, because they were a startup, and as you heard yesterday, somebody said that customers wait. They really need to get the products in a quick pace into the market. And of course, the product development cycles have shortened quite a lot. And the way they work is that they actually don't manufacture really anything themselves, but like you know, all the smartphones are manufactured in China by few vendors, so all the iPhones and Android phones are actually manufactured in the one and the same factory, but there are those walls between the lines, the factory lines. So it was the urgency really to get the products out. And because it was a new company, all the processes, well, there weren't any processes, so all the processes had to be created. You can imagine the logistics, sales channels, user support, everything had to be done from scratch in a very short notice. So it was a mess, it was confusing, but well, we made it.
Okay, and the last question.
Hello, I'm Balint from Hungary again. I'm just curious, when it comes to technical illustrations, did you have someone in your team? Did you have a free hand in the production of technical illustrations, or was it another external liability to handle?
Yeah, that's a good question. When we started, none of in our team could do any graphics, so we had to actually recruit a graphic designer. We first bought the services outside, but then we actually recruited her in our team. So we had a very good graphic designer, and that's something that you really need because, well, you saw one of the keys and parts pictures, so she's really good. But the requirements again came from the customer's brand team. So they told us what kind of graphics they want to have, and then we created them. Yeah.
But you had someone in your team?
Now we have someone, yeah, definitely a graphics designer, yeah.
Okay.
A very good one, actually.
Thank you for all your questions. Thank you, Anna, for your great presentation.